All right. Hi, guys.
How you doing?
Yeah, good.
Good. Awesome to have you on. This is a bit of a different one for us. Usually it's a marketing focus. I suppose this is being a bit indulgent in my own kind of personal interest, but we're talking about mental health and maybe talking a little bit about men's mental health in this podcast or video podcast. So I suppose if you just introduce yourself, just so we know who we're talking to.
Yeah. Well, I'm Anthony. I work for Hull and East Yorkshire Mind. My role is working with businesses in the local area. So anyone within Hull and East Yorkshire, from one-man bands up to corporate entities, I guess. Fundraising, talking therapies, mental health training, pretty much anything and everything to do with a business.
Yeah.
Generally seems to come from myself.
Yeah.
So it's quite a wide range.
Yeah, it's good. It's good that the local Mind Association has that resource, I think. So I actually used to work for Mind as well.
Right.
There was employment support, but there wasn't kind of anything that was a bit more flexible and a bit more kind of on the ground, chatting to businesses on a more real level, I think.
I think so. When I joined, it was about 3 and a bit years ago now. I was kind of the first one to enter that role. Sorry, I was the first one to enter that role, so it didn't really exist before.
Yeah.
And we had a community fundraiser who kind of managed that, but they had their own job work in the community. So I think we noticed that we could do a lot more work with businesses and how we interact with them. We can support more people that way. So that's kind of how the role came about, I guess.
Great. Thank you.
Cool. So I'm Matt Scarth, Head of Sales and Marketing at Reality Solutions. And this year we're partnering with Hull and East Yorkshire Mind as part of our 25th anniversary celebrations. We want to give back to local charities that we believe in and are invested in, and I'm sure that'll become clear as we talk a bit more today.
Yeah. So we are all here today to talk about kind of mental health. So I suppose we're probably all here for a reason. What brings you into what is your experience of mental health? I mean that in a way, just talk as comfortably as you can, I think, or as you want to about that.
I mean, for me, I think I've been quite lucky in the fact that I've never really struggled with my mental health. Obviously, everyone has the mental health, and I suppose some people are better at managing that than others. But big part of that happened. So in my previous job, I worked at a bank in the city centre, and about 5 years ago, maybe, a chap came in. He had big knives on him, and he tried to set fire to the bank.
Oh my God!
He can. So it was quite a bad situation, I guess. And all those
a bad situation.
It only lasted a few minutes or so. Realistically, I was in the moment. I genuinely feared for my life.
Yeah, absolutely, and rightfully so.
I think across the whole branch, a lot of people then began to struggle with mental health from that.
People traumatized from it.
Yeah, going back into that same situation. It's a busy branch. There's lots of people outside and things like that. So it's difficult to go back into that situation.
Yeah,
and I guess from there, that's when I started to do a lot of fundraising for Hull and East Yorkshire Mind and other mental health charities as well.
Yeah.
And it almost just happened by accident that I came up available, and I kind of fell into that. So I guess from my perspective, it's more about helping people I'd been close to. I worked at the bank for 4 years, so you obviously get very close with people over that time, and you don't really want to see people who are close to you struggling.
No.
So it was kind of my way to kind of give back and also raise awareness, so that if people did need support, it almost seems okay that you can speak about it. Because as we all know, there's a big stigma, especially on men's mental health, but in mental health in general.
I think there is. I think it's changed. When I worked at Mind, we're talking 12, 13 years ago. So I was working in mental health, but so then we were really trying hard to reverse that kind of, because the stigma was just ridiculous back then. I think with social media, in some ways, it's kind of flipped on its head to where everyone is talking about it, but then maybe not on certain kind of real levels. There's a lot of there's an element of people talking about it on social media and talking about how they're struggling. Then there's also this Instagram culture where you only put the good parts of your life. So it's not that authentic in some ways, I think.
I agree. I think it goes both ways. Social media can be a big problem for mental health, but also has a lot of power to reach a lot of people.
It does, yeah.
So obviously as a local charity, we decide to use social media. We like Facebook and the rest of it. And we feel like it just allows us to reach a lot more people, like you were saying. But there's always those pitfalls, I guess, and like your online trolls and all that type of stuff that make it a difficult place.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I feel like everyone's lives have changed dramatically in this online and social media era. For good and for bad, it is what it is. We're in it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And what about yourself, Matt?
Yeah, so I mean, I always tend to say, oh, you know, my journey with mental health started when I was 17. I think in reality, it didn't. I think that was just the catastrophe point that got there. So for a bit of context, I used to play sport when I was younger. I got relatively good at cricket. I was in the professional setup at Yorkshire, played to a very high level, representing England age group and things like that. I think for me, the big issue came around that time. Literally just walking to sixth form one day, had a major panic attack, couldn't breathe, was literally retching and couldn't work out what was wrong. From that, I went home. Went to training on that night, was in Leeds at least 3 nights a week. And was contrary to what I look like now, I was the fittest, probably. I used to love it. I had a bit of that masochism about training where I just wanted to be the best.
Yeah. You're competitive. Yeah,
ultra competitive. Just wanted to be the best. You know, I can't even let my kids win at stuff now. And, you know, they're too young to know yet, but they will never win.
That's what you think anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, true. Yeah, until they do, and then I'll sulk. But, you know, it's things like that where I was just ultra focused. I went to training that night. I was doing fitness training, and again, I had to dip out. Thought I was going to be sick. Went to the toilet. Something not right. Thought I'll just go to doctors, get sorted out. I'll be fine. Again, that next day, I tried walking again, just a sixth form, was ill again. Had to come home. From then, I spent literally 3 months in my house. Couldn't leave the house.
Fucking hell. So it went from having
to that was 3 months of not leaving the house, and that just set me on a very, very long journey of where I thought my life was going.
Yeah,
and it was very, very much went in a different direction. You know, you asked me at that age, what would I be doing now? And, you know, in the nicest possible way, I wouldn't be sat here. You know, I'd be doing other things. You know, I've got friends who are England captains and stuff like that. We were on the same level, we were on a par, and we were good friends. And, you know, we had that life planned out. So that set off a long road, really, of a series of things of having to manage and cope with that graded exposure of getting out and very, very tiny things, standing out in the garden for a bit, walking halfway up the street, walking to the top of the street, walking to the shop, trying to get a bus, you know, things like that, and then trying to get back out into the real world.
And was this graded exposure something you did by yourself, or was something you did through therapy?
The thing is, I tried to, back then as well, I mean, I'm 33 now, I was 17 then. Trying to access that help then was so difficult. I went to doctors, and it sounds really horrible to say, doesn't it? But I did loads of blood tests and things like that, and I kind of hoped there was something medically wrong where somebody gives you a tablet, somebody says, do this, you will be fine.
Yeah. It's almost... unfortunately, it's easier, isn't it? Because then it's like, I know that this is...
I know the answer.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, they did all the blood tests, did heart rate monitoring and stuff like that. And they were like, God, there's nothing... You're one of the fittest people. I was like, I know that. But just tell me what is wrong.
Yeah.
Then I can sort it out. And it's kind of not knowing was the worst bit. I couldn't explain it, you know, and I think it all came from the fact that if you go back, you know, years before that, from sort of the age of 12, as I said before, it was 3 nights a week minimum in Leeds. Playing on a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, at least. I suppose the issues came from the fact that I never really fit in anywhere. You know, when I was at school, I had my mates and stuff, and it was weird because you always, especially in our area, you would associate those kids who would have kind of quote unquote mental health problems as being the quiet one, sat in the back, sat in the corner, not speaking to people, not sociable. It was kind of the opposite. You know, I was very sociable, hyper social. But my mates I had at school, I wouldn't really see outside of school because I'd be training, playing. When I was training and playing, I was either in the Yorkshire setup, as it were, with cricket was quite a posh sport, you know, with kids who are at private school. I'm a working class lad from Hull. I've got nothing in common with any of those people. Nice kids, but they don't get me and I don't get them. That's not my world. You know, my best mate there was a Asian lad, Chavez, from Wakefield. We got on like a house on fire because we just both understood each other.
Yeah.
You know,
From different worlds,
yeah, culturally, much different. He's a Muslim lad from
yeah.
and we couldn't have been culturally much different, but in terms of understanding how the world worked for us, we got it. We understood it. You know, and then on a weekend, I'd be playing sort of cricket in a men's team from the age of sort of 12 upwards, and you know, playing in the best team at a men's level, at amateur level, and kind of going, right, this is great. I've got nothing in common with these guys as well. Yeah. They're all in the mid 20s, early 30s. They've all got families, or you know, the best will in the world. You finish a game, everyone's going out for a drink, and you kind of like, oh, I love the one you after. And you stay in the bar, and then everyone goes, right, we're going out, and you go, I'll go on then. Yeah. You know, and then I've got a game tomorrow anyway, so I'll be driving up to Carlisle or whatever to be with another group of people that I don't sit in with. You know, and I think that, as I said, you know, I always said, it started for me when I was 17. I don't think it did. You know, in hindsight, I think it started long before. And I just reached that catastrophe point. You know, I'd just been away on tour to South Africa. Everything was great. You know, I came back home. I'd lost my grandma not long before. I lost my granddad just after that. He was a big part of my life. He was kind of the non-judgmental part of my life where I could go and just have a chat. Yeah. We didn't talk about anything, really. Talk about sport. About what we loved about sport and having a chat. And, you know, we were planning for him to come and watch me. He never watched me play because he couldn't get out and he didn't want to leave my grandma. He wasn't particularly well. You know, so that summer was gearing up for that. You know, he was going to come see me. It was going to be great. And then he passed away. And I don't know. I don't know how I piece it all together now. I certainly couldn't at the time. Nothing made sense. And like you say about accessing that help, doctors were great, but there was so little they could do. Prescribe you some antidepressants, take them. I didn't feel like that made a difference to me. They put me into counselling, which worked, but after waiting, I think it's 8 or 9 weeks I waited. I saw a counsellor for 2 sessions. She was great. And then she told me she was going on a sabbatical for 6 months, which didn't mean I got passed on to someone else, just meant you went to the back of the queue. And I was like, right, okay, so what do we do? I mean, my parents tried everything, you know, just speaking to people, found somebody who was a psychotherapist who we knew through cricket. He sat with me for a bit, went through some things, was great. Somebody who was a retired counsellor, she was great, you know, but no structured kind of support until finally I did get to see a psychotherapist through the NHS. She was a trainee, but she couldn't have been any better. She was absolutely brilliant and just kind of set me on the right path. But I never realised how hard it would be and how much hard work it would be just to get there. You know, so from this normal planned out path that I had in my head from the age of whatever to, you know, being effectively jobless. I don't, you know, another kick in the bollocks really was when those guys kind of turned around after I said to them, look, I might not be able to make it in. I don't think I'm going to make it in. I think I had an email basically saying, yeah, just let us know. There's no contact or support from the organisation. You know, you've seen things in the press recently about certain things that have gone on there. I never saw some of the stuff that was alleged, but there's certainly a culture of a macho culture.
It's elitist. And
massively. And if you're not the best, and especially if you're not there, we're not interested. I always said, I get it because they invested so much money in me, which they did, but there was no human compassion. Empathy. There was nothing. No, there was no empathy there. There was nothing there. I don't know if that's changed now. I'm not involved, but
you'd like to hope that it has changed, but in sport, it's weird, isn't it? It's a weird...
It's a strange environment. I think if I put myself in my shoes of what I was doing at that time as well, so, you know, people know nothing about sports sometimes. So as a bowler, I used to open the ball in. So my job was to be quick and intimidate people. If you've got that ball coming at you, it hurts. So my job was never really necessarily to, you know, do all the finesse. It was to hurt people, scare people, you know, and that kind of thing. So it's very difficult when you're in that environment then to put your hand up and go, oh, I'm really struggling. You know, when you're the intimidating one, you don't want to let everybody else down.
Of course,
you know, and I think rightly or wrongly as well, that working class background I had, you never did that. You don't have those conversations. You don't, you know, you don't say anything like that to your mum or your dad or your brother or whatever. You just don't. You don't have those conversations. That's something that would, to me, it was weird.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? You know, I mean, to all intents and purposes, there was nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was anything wrong. I didn't know any different. You know, if I have discussions with my kids now, I'd be telling them all sorts of different things.
Of course.
I didn't have that knowledge.
I think there is a generational thing with that. I mean, I get it. Like our parents' era, they're growing up in a different world. Like the world has changed so much, and I completely understand that. But the problem is as well in the working environment, still quite a lot of our kind of parents' era are still the bosses and stuff.
Yeah.
And I get it. They're running their businesses or they're running organisations with maybe some of the values that don't align with our. I assume we're all similar age, and we're having kids and have families and stuff. And now we're the next kind of generation of people that are coming through that. And I'd hope that from a mental health perspective, anyway. So I know it's like things get better and things get worse, and stuff that's deemed as progress sometimes isn't always progress. But I think with mental health, we're definitely making progress in men as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it might not seem it at the moment, but I think that's still a big hangover from previous.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a balance, isn't there? It's, you know, between, like you said, there's those people at the top of a lot of businesses now, big business. It's very much that old culture still exists.
Just shut up and put up kind of thing. Yeah.
But I think that has to change. There has to be Anthony mentioned the word empathy. You've got to lead with empathy now. You know, you have to lead with empathy. I lead people at work, and you have to be empathetic, but also you have to set boundaries. About what is and isn't acceptable within the workplace.
Yeah.
You know, I'm all for people having a bit of leeway and stuff and looking after people, but business is business as well. You have to be there to do your job, and your job, if we like it or not, we don't pay our own bills. The boss pays our bills.
100%.
So we've got to look after that element of it as well. And as long as people know there are boundaries, but also it's an open and honest culture.
Yeah.
That's probably, and I don't speak as anybody who knows everything, but that's probably the best way to go about it.
Yes.
I think we've got to be, I think we've all got to be better at that. You know, we've all got to be better at looking after people. But, you know, by the same token, you mentioned earlier about social media, influencers, Unfortunately, where there is things like this, there is also money to be made. And people who are insincere and aren't particularly genuine will put themselves or things out there for an ulterior motive, a reason. The reason I've never done anything like this from a business perspective is because I'm ultimately the most cynical person in the world. I'm incredibly distrusting of people and what they do. And, you know, that there's a lot of spiel about it's okay to talk. You know, in my opinion, it is until it isn't. And when it isn't, is in the workplace. And when it isn't is when you're talking about a work setting. And when it isn't is when you're talking about people at work. You know, we're very, very good at pushing it out there privately and stuff. And the reason I agreed to do this is because I've always done it privately. I'm not bothered.
Are we there? I don't think we are that good. I think you might be good, but
I've always had the philosophy, if anybody asks me, I'll talk.
Yeah.
I will never go and tell anybody first. Because although it's a huge, huge part of me and a part of my life, unless they're asking, they obviously don't want to know. Which might be the wrong way of looking at it. But because if they don't know, why would they ask?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, from a work perspective, I think now is the time to start talking about things like that and start pushing it out there a bit more. And just, you know, people with experience and going, you know what, this is what happened. This is what shaped why I do what I do now. And hopefully it works.
Honestly,
are we any good at it? I don't know. No.
Well, I suppose I was going to bring an answer. It's like, I know it's quite difficult because obviously you work with employers and you want to keep things, well, you want to keep people's conversations kind of private and stuff, and not asking you to kind of disclose anything like confidential. But what do you see like as a landscape? Like,
I think it's definitely becoming more accepting.
Yeah.
The main thing, like Matt said, is the workplace culture. If the workplace culture is right, then people will feel okay to speak about it. There's definitely been businesses that I've been into, and we'll speak to the staff members, we'll maybe speak to the people that are offering this support, and they might be trying really hard and they're just kind of missing the point, and they're not doing what's right for their employees.
And do you think that's coming from a conscious level or an unconscious level?
Both. I think some
yeah.
companies will be doing it to tick a box.
Yeah.
And for us, they're probably not the companies we want to be working with. If you believe we can educate and change that culture, then brilliant. But if this literally almost using our brand, if you like, to tick a few boxes, show everyone they're doing good when they don't really mean it, we'd rather not be involved.
And that is really frustrating, isn't it? Like using something to bandwagon, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do believe, I think for the most part, there's a lot of businesses out there that do want to do the right thing. And again, that could be because they do care about the employees. But also from a financial benefit, I think people are more aware now that if you look after your employees, they're not going to be leaving. You're not going to have high turnover.
For me, that just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want to constantly lose your team members because you're a dickhead?
You pay to recruit, pay to train, just over and over and over. Whereas if that employee just stays in the business, maybe initially he's not going to be as productive as he once was, but once you support him and he still wants to come to work, then he's going to be a hell of a lot more productive.
It's absolutely crazy, yeah. It's crazy in some ways and crazy in others, because ultimately people are, I mean, it's more of a pub conversation, to be fair, but like, it's just frustrating because it's like, I feel people maybe get to a certain level and then they're used to this privilege to some degree, or they just don't care. Yeah. Maybe they just don't care. It's like that empathy that you were saying.
Yeah, I think that is part of it. You know, like as I said, I'm ultimately cynical. And even if you're looking at it in the most cynical vein, why would you not want to look after yourself?
Yeah.
You know, I don't get, I mean, I went out of the frying pan into the fire. I decided to go into sales. What an idiot. You know, so I went from a ultimately competitive and, you know, results-driven stress world into another one. And again, I must be a masochist because it's madness, isn't it? Why would you do it and put yourself under that pressure and stress?
Well, I suppose that's kind of what you're kind of good at.
Yeah, but then you flip it on its head and you go, right, so, you know, I think you can learn from every place you've ever worked in. I've worked at some places that have been great, some that have been far less than that.
Yeah.
And you kind of take things from all of them, the good and the bad, and you try and work with it.
Yeah.
And I could never understand why, if you were working in a sales team, anybody who was running that would want to hold anybody down and go, oh, well, you know, ultimately that's just insecurity.
Yes.
I think, even from that cynical perspective, I want them to achieve, because everybody wins.
Yeah.
Business wins, you win. Christ, you look good, don't you? If everybody else is performing really well, then you're the boss. And you go, oh, there we go. You know, so even cynically, that works. I don't get why you wouldn't do everything you possibly can to help people achieve that. You know, yes, there has to be some boundaries in place that we discussed before, but there also has to be a degree of flexibility. How do I get the best out of you? And if it is giving them that support and that help and giving them that little bit of time away sometimes as well, you know, as I said, it's an ultimately stressful environment, particularly that I work in. You need to do something, you know, you need to switch off. How do you do that? How do you cope with that? Having a superficial conversation about, oh, well, we give you a 15-minute break in an afternoon at work, it's absolute nonsense.
I think it all stems from how authentic the person or the people are that run the business. Do they actually genuinely want? Do they care or don't they? Like you say that you do think if you want the people around you to succeed, it seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? Because everyone's lifted up. But then some people just aren't bothered. I think that, I don't know whether that's a solvable issue. I suppose, Anthony, what can businesses do, or what have you seen that businesses have done that have actually helped, that have maybe struggled and they want to help, but maybe they're not, they don't fully know.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
You see a lot, so we mentioned Mental Health Awareness Week. A lot of companies may do something because it's Mental Health Awareness Week. We'll put on a seminar or something, and then we won't hear about it until the following year. Whereas I think it's not as easy as that. You've got to keep banging it and driving to that workplace culture that it's okay to talk.
Consistency.
And people can, at any point, because people aren't necessarily struggling on Mental Health Awareness Week and in Christmas time, which is 7-8 months away, they've forgotten all that stuff like you spoke about for half an hour on a Wednesday afternoon. So I think it's just, consistency is probably the right word. Well, just allowing people to know that support is available. But we're all individuals as well. So I guess some people may not want to go to speak to the boss because they'll have these preconceptions of what we just mentioned.
Of course.
That they'll think I'm struggling with my mental health. Maybe I shouldn't speak to them, which probably isn't the case. But having like the external presence that we offer sometimes gives people a bit more confidence to come and speak to us. They know it's confidential. We're not going to then go back to the business and say, guess what? John from finance, they just said about it. It's about, this is what some of your employees might need support with.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, consistency and awareness is key for me.
Yeah. I think as well as now that we have gone through a really like a phase, especially over the last 10 years of mental health becoming very much in people's awareness.
Yeah.
I feel like that has definitely improved things, and more, I suppose, just more people who work have known someone who has gone through a hard time. I can remember when I worked in mental health, it was like 1 in 4 people had a mental health condition at any point in their lives. I think it's everybody. Everybody goes through something. Yeah. Like, no doubt about it. However you label it or however it's described, everyone goes through something bad and hard. And it's just, I feel like the more awareness and the more knowledge we've all got of that, the better surely we can tackle it.
Yeah, I agree.
And do you see the landscape? Have you seen the landscape change? I know you've only been doing it for 3 years.
Yeah, I suppose I came in 2021.
Yeah.
So obviously we just had coronavirus.
Just after COVID,
we grew massively since then. Don't quote me, but I think we're like 3 times the size as when before the coronavirus. And I think it caused a lot of problems. Obviously, people was told to not be social, not to speak to people, stay in your house and all that stuff. And that, I suppose, that loneliness aspect that we talk about quite often was heightened. But at the same time, I think it also promoted awareness around mental health because, as you say, I think more people realise that they maybe have struggled or someone that they know has struggled before. And that grew the awareness. And I think the stigma slowly was surely getting broken down. It's just, I suppose it'll never be broken, but we just want to try and do as much as we can so that everyone, if they need support, they're going to reach out for it. They're not going to feel like they can't or they'll be judged because it's just not right.
I suppose on the flip side, some people, this sounds awful, but I do feel like it is the reality. Some people will use mental health as a get out of jail card to not do their job or stuff that they want to do in their lives, and that I suppose there's no real, you'll never really know that, but you could say that about anything. People can call in sick because they got diarrhea that's not how it actually. It's not like if people don't want to be working for whatever reason, there's multiple reasons behind that. It's not like having a blame culture, is it?
It's difficult because it's ultimately, I suppose, unprovable.
Yeah,
and that is part of the whole issue of it, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
that's one of the things that I really struggled with when I was first. So, trying to explain that to people who are friends and stuff, and it's one of those things, isn't it? Everybody always says, you break your arm, there's evidence.
Especially when you were so young. Yeah. Like we're in our 30s now.
Yeah,
I think, Anthony. And like, so it's different, isn't it? Like
it's one of those things. I think, I don't know. There's never a right time. It's never a right time. I think if that. And don't get me wrong, I still have the fallout and the issue every single day. Really. It's less frequent than it was. It's less dark than it was. There'll be days where I'm just not interested, and it's a struggle just to crack on and do stuff. But then I think, if that happened to me now, Christ, I've got kids, I've got family, I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got to do it. Got to. So if that sort of catastrophe situation would be happening now, that's almost like, wow, it's game over. So I can understand why.
Are there any like almost techniques or any good practices that you've learned in your to manage those things?
It's really difficult. As I mentioned before, it's about that graded exposure thing. So it's about whatever gets to you and managing that. I still suffer really, really badly now with things like heights and weirdly glass buildings. I struggle massively with those. And I have to kind of try and get out of my own head with those. I'm an absolute nightmare for trying to plan ahead. If somebody says, oh, you got a meeting here and I've never been there before, I'll be looking at it. I'll be panicking about it. Going, where is it? What floor are we on? What are we doing? Things like that. I still get into my own head massively about stuff like that. It's an ongoing thing. I think I try and access help wherever I can. If it's getting too much, things like Time to Talk and stuff are brilliant. I was there for almost for a year last year, just trying to go over things that it's ever evolving. It's never just one thing. It's never just the same issue. I think if you can tackle one issue, do it one at a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and don't be afraid to keep going back and thinking, shit.
Don't be defeated by it.
I've won. It's kind of an ever evolving thing. It sounds defeatist to say you'll never win, but the reality is there will probably, as you said, there'll always be something that crops
You're winning
up.
just doing bit like.
There'll always be something that goes, and also by the same token, don't be afraid to look back at where you were and go, Jesus Christ, I'm doing all right now.
Yeah,
100%. What defines your success? Because to me, when I was sort of 16, 17, it would be traveling the world, playing sport, probably being a multi-millionaire. That defined my life. That defined success.
Yeah.
And I was looking at people were looking at me going, oh Christ, I wish I had that kind of life. I wish I was doing that in my time. I wish, kids used to love me at school because I was never at school because I was always away playing sport. And they used to let
me like a celeb.
But they used to let me go and they were like, fine. And they I've got to go to school. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
And they judged me and went, oh God, that'd be great. Then I flipped on its head, and by the age of 20, I'd been dropping in and out of jobs and stuff because I couldn't cope. And I was kind of looking at them going, just want a house. Just want a car. Just want what quote unquote normal is.
Yeah.
That defined my success then, was what the whole dynamics of what it was to be successful changed. What I defined as my success and what I wanted to do. I've already said I'm still like almost ultra competitive and I want to be the best at what I do, but I've also had to come to terms with everything is on a sliding scale.
Yes.
But you never want to be at 100%. You never even want to be 100% nice person because you get walked over, you get mistreated, you're vulnerable. So it's about realizing then, right, where do I actually want to be?
Yeah.
And what is success and what defines that to me? Ultimately, my family now determines what is my success. I want them to be comfortable. I want them to, I want them to be happy. I want them to live good lives. And, we're all selfish in some respects. We want to make sure we've got everything for us and for them. It's changed. What is success has changed, and business for me has allowed me to have that security, and that's really important to me now. I have that security. I can look after my family. I can give them what they need. And that is really, really important. No longer is the focus being. To be honest, I was a bit of a dick, I think. When I look,
the level of self-awareness.
I look back here now, I was probably arrogant. I was probably, very self-absorbed, as any teenager. Probably
I think, young lads as well.
Yeah, and I think, that it took a while to get rid of that, though.
Yeah.
It took a long time to get rid of that. And I think, I also got stuck in that cycle of, poor me.
Yeah.
Which is quite easy to do. And I think, if anybody is struggling, you said about self-awareness, it's the most difficult thing to do in the world, is to try and detach yourself from those problems and look at them kind of objectively and go, right, how can we approach it? How can we do it? What can we do about it?
Yeah.
You speak to my future wife now and she will say that sometimes I'm annoyingly kind of pragmatic. I'll go, right, okay, so what we're going to do about it?
Yeah. I think as men generally, like I am very much generalizing here, just disclaimer, but I think women tend to be less pragmatic and more emotional, and men tend to be more pragmatic and less emotional. I feel like I'm a fairly emotional dude, and I know that my son is in comparison to my daughter almost, and you can kind of see that. But still, I feel like there is a level of normality within that, and I feel like that's just a challenge in male and female relationships anyway, and navigating that.
It's the nuance of it. It's difficult, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah.
My son plays football, and he's in that kind of physical landscape where I'm kind of saying to him, "Well, do the things we used to do when we were that age, get stuck in and this, that, and the other." Yeah. And I'm kind of, I'm watching them play, and I'm going, "Oh, Christ, what's all this about?"
Yeah.
Oh, well done. And then I have to check myself and go, "Yeah, the world's changed a bit." Still, when it comes to sport, I still associate how I used to when I was playing football, rugby, cricket, and I was kind of like, right, ultra ego, I suppose. Be arrogant,
Be hard. Yeah.
Be tough.
Be hard, yeah.
And now it's, and some elements of it, you do kind of, it's weird, isn't it? Because I suppose the whole message of this is there's no black and white, there's no right and wrong. It is that sliding scale. There is a bit of nuance there because I'm also saying don't go too far the other way.
Yeah.
Don't go too far the other way where, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to challenge anything. We're not going to stand up for anything. We have to
100%. Yeah. There needs to be a level of resilience, doesn't there?
Yeah.
Not saying like no resilience.
Exactly.
Like we're saying, still have some resilience, but like
adversity is a great thing as well. And I think that everything I've ever done or managed to be remotely successful or achieve has come because I failed.
Yeah.
Everybody who comes to work for us, and particularly work for me in that sales environment, I said, be prepared to fail a lot because you will fail more than you will win. And if you can't,
especially in sales, you're going to get a lot of no's, not many yeses.
If you can't handle that element of it, and it's not nasty to say, look, it probably ain't for you, give yourself a break. You don't need it. You don't need that environment where you will feel like you're losing most of the time. And it's about staying level. Don't get too sad when it doesn't work. Don't get too high when you win. And I think my past experience has allowed me to do that. I think if whatever reason I'd have gone away from the sport and it hadn't have worked out for other reasons, and then I'd have gone into this kind of environment now, I'd probably be that really arrogant, egocentric person you see on LinkedIn. It's all about me, I great, and pushing that kind of narrative. Might be successful, might be not, but I'd be different. Definitely be different. And somebody else actually said to me, oh yeah, but don't you wish that didn't happen to you? I kind of go, well, from a pain and a nastiness point of view, yeah, of course I do. But would I change it now? No.
Well, it's you, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's your individual story. And who's to say it could have got a lot worse? Like my friend committed suicide. He hung himself. And as a... how old was I? Maybe 30? I think I was about 29, 30. I remember when I first heard the news about it, I just didn't believe it. Didn't believe it for like full... I think I remember the guy who rang me. I was like, no, what are you on about? And he was like put back by it. So I was like, yeah. Then I remember when I drove home, I could barely even drive my car because just the tears just flooded. And after that, like, it completely smashed I worked in mental health, and then, but that, it took me months. I still get upset by it sometimes. It's just, it was like a bomb going off. I can't even imagine what it was like. The family who I knew. And for me, that changed my perception of mental health and the impact that it generally does have. Yeah. Because that can happen, can't it?
Yeah, and like I said before about being kind of egocentric and selfish in a way with it, you don't even think at the time what it's doing to everybody else around you. I look back now and I think on my parents, on my family and stuff, and what they must have felt. They were kind of trying everything. I remember my dad even got me to go to a hypnotist, see if I try something, and they were trying everything. And I can only imagine how helpless they must have felt. Because I did as well. So if I was the one who was happening to, was what's everyone else thinking? What are they? You definitely don't think about that at the time. And like you say, once you kind of get out of that space a bit, things like, your friend, I've had a couple of friends who commit suicide. And the thing that really rocks you is I kind of sit there sometimes and go, that wasn't far off being me, was it? That wasn't far off. And that gets me every time.
Yeah.
When I think about, I'm fortunate now, I've got lovely family and things like that. And that won't happen. I won't be there. And that, even now when I think about that gets me really emotional. And I struggle with that sometimes. And I know people say, oh, well, yeah, but did it? And you go, yeah, but could have.
Yeah, it could have.
You're looking at those facts and figures and still the biggest premature killer of men under the age of 50 is suicide.
Yeah.
I don't see that changing. We'll talk and we'll discuss it, and I don't think we'll see it changing unless that cultural change happens. It has to be somewhere between the superficial Instagram post and the hard-nosed get on with it. We have to meet somewhere in the middle. We have to have a sensible discussion about it, and we have to say, look, that just be honest and don't be a dick. They're the two things that I ask people who come to work for us to do. My only philosophy on culture is be honest. Because if you're struggling with anything, work related or whatever, I can help you. I can't help you with anything I don't know anything about. Keep it to yourself. I don't know about it. I can't help you. Something goes wrong, you bury your head in the sand. I can't help you because I don't know about it. If something goes wrong, we can help. And the other one is just don't be a dick. And I think that's massively taken for granted. You know, and that is about a philosophy of just being open, being honest. And I don't even mean talking about your emotions, talking about your feelings. It's, look, if you've got a problem with something that's happened, we need to have a discussion about it. People need to be more approachable as well.
It's that, yeah.
You've all had that director fear.
Yeah.
You go in and you think, big boss.
Because that's, I mean, was, well, when you're younger, when I was younger anyway, my jobs, some bosses were nice, but some bosses just weren't.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people will still experience that. I'd like to think it's getting better.
Yeah.
Back to your honesty and don't be a dick. The worst thing is when people think that being honest it like masks their dickheadness. And it's like, oh no, I'm just being honest. Yeah, but you don't have to just slag someone off just because you're being honest.
Correct.
It's like,
and that's what we're talking about, that spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah.
People go, just say it as it is, man. No, you're an absolute social hybrid. And nobody needs to be around.
Yeah, and no one likes you. Yeah.
Why would you ever say that?
Exactly.
You know, so it is on a spectrum. Isn't it? You can't just go, I say it as I see it. You know, you are not.
Yeah.
Don't say that bit. Because that doesn't help.
Imagine if you could just say anything that you wanted.
Yeah.
That's just a right horrible shit. Like, you're not going to say everything that pops into your head.
And that's about having that nuanced discussion, isn't it? Because I keep going back to it. There is no right, there's no wrong. It's just somewhere in between. You know, we've got to have an honest discussion with humour as well. Let's laugh about it. You know,
it's very British to laugh about.
Made my life easier.
Yeah.
Laughing about stuff sounds real simple, doesn't it? Made my life easier laughing about stuff. The best thing that the psychotherapist ever said to me when I was really, really struggling, I was spending pretty much all day in bed but never sleeping. I was awake for about 2 hours. Asleep for about 2 hours a night.
Yeah.
I was nicking cans of beer and my mum and dad didn't know, and they're all piled up in the eaves of the loft and went nuts. But I was just trying something just to switch off and go up. And the best thing she ever said was, right, when you go to bed, put something funny on telly. Don't necessarily watch it, but something that makes you laugh. Put it on and you'll feel better. Weird. Just that thing about laughing and humour snaps you out of something. And, you know, you've got to treat things with a bit of humour. If you take everything too seriously, it'll consume your life. Yeah. You know, it will get to you.
Yeah.
Having that honesty and sincerity to deal with things in that way. Get it, it's not for everyone.
But it's having that playful, that creativity and letting yourself be, enjoy stuff.
Make yourself. I've always said, you know, if you own that little bit and you make it funny about you, and, you know, you ask anybody, I'm always taking the piss out of myself because it's easier. It stops them doing it for a start. Saves them a job. But then, you know, you're owning that. You're taking ownership of that. And no one else can do anything about it if you take ownership of something. You know, that again goes back to the being honest bit. Just take that onus yourself. Be honest about it. Be honest about what it is you've got, what you struggle with. And then, you know, if you are self-conscious about that being in someone else's hands, guess what? You've already taken it.
Yeah.
So no one else can do anything with it now.
Yeah.
It's yours. You know, and that's the tricky bit, I think, as men as well. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to have a little pity party about being a man and born in a certain way, but just get trickier. You know.
Well, there's obviously a thing, isn't there, to do, like you said before about the statistics. I can't remember what the statistics are, but it's a big
killer of men under 50 in terms of premature death.
Yeah, I think it is. Again, I don't know the specific the specific statistics, but it's very much Western, like in a Western culture, like in America, it's similar. But I suppose, Anthony, like, what do you see? Like in the charity sector, is there any like focus on male? This sounds really bad because obviously women also have mental health issues, and suicide rates for women aren't good either. Yeah. But is there anything specifically male related?
I think most of our services are aimed generally to both sexes, any age, that type of stuff.
Because I've got like Andy's Man Club, aren't there? Yeah, and that's for like he's specifically men into.
We also recognise that, like Matt said, with the figures on male suicides, it's a big thing for us to tackle.
Yeah.
So we have something similar like a men's group. So they just meet every Wednesday and they'll go have a laugh, like you said. They'll just have a laugh. Like sometimes they're not even talking about the mental health. They'll go for a beer, or they'll go bowling, or do an activity together, go for a walk in the park, and they just have a chat, more like a social group. And if people want to speak on mental health, they can do.
Yeah.
I suppose from my perspective, a lot of the businesses we tend to work with can have quite heavily male employee bases.
Yeah.
So if you think
We're in Hull as well. We've got quite an old school industrial style like economy to some degree.
Yeah.
I suppose me and you, Matt, are working like tech and marketing and stuff. And there's businesses, there's loads of them when you go to Leeds and Manchester, but we're very like we are at the end of the M62, and that does reflect in our in our economy.
The construction businesses that we've got around here, and those males are kind of in pretty much all male environments.
Yeah.
One that we've spoke about, it can then be difficult to speak to your colleagues and stuff.
Yeah.
Because what if you speak to the wrong one and you're getting judged and all that? Well, there's
real consequences from that, isn't there? Like if that person also is in a position of higher power than you, then that might affect your livelihood. And sometimes it's not even worth doing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose there's the group.
We do try and approach those types of companies that may have a more of a interest in supporting their employees. Male suicide rates as well. But yeah, it varies a lot. We're well aware that anyone can struggle with mental health. Everyone has mental health. And it's just kind of giving people the tools to manage it best they can.
And you're away from work, what is your personal experience like men and mental health? Is there?
I would agree. Most of my friends are male, and we next to never speak about mental health. Considering I work in the industry, it's probably a bad thing to say, but it's one of those things I'd be happier to speak to a female probably if I was struggling than a man. And even so, probably an external, almost stranger than one of my friends that I'm close to.
Yes.
And again, they're probably struggling as well at times. And we just don't particularly talk about it.
I suppose sometimes with your friends as well, you get that comic relief, like you were saying, and it's like a safe place to just be like funny and stuff. But I think even if you're talking about the impact and even saying, oh, well, I know this guy, or I know this guy who this happened to him, even talking about it is better than completely ignoring it and it not being a thing. I think is important.
Well, they say like every suicide affects 60 people. So going back to what you said around your friend and like how his family must have felt and all that stuff, there's probably around 60 people that was impacted by that. God. And that's 60 more people struggling.
Yeah.
And
it must be more like it's...
And we offer services around that specifically, like treatment support. And that's a well-used service. Like Mara Louise, my colleague, she does the community side of things, and she gets emails every other week, maybe around a young suicide or something on those lines, a funeral collection. And it's
so hard to comprehend. I feel like when a suicide, you just can't believe that it's happened. So you can't believe someone would do that. And that's their choice. You kind of grow up thinking you die because something like happens to you. But then to choose that is so tragic. And I feel like as a friend or a family, it's so hard. It's always like, what could I have done? Why? What? Like, I didn't do enough. And there's like, you go through that kind of like those stages, don't you?
I don't think you can do anything differently. If people don't want the support, they won't reach out for it.
Exactly, yeah.
And I suppose, again, going back to workplace culture, if they're just talking about like constant, then people are going to reach out for it when they feel comfortable to do so. But in your situation and many others, there is nothing more you can do other than just be there for them. So they've made that decision. They're obviously in a very bad place, and that was what they felt was right for them at the time. But as long as we keep preaching that they can speak, and hopefully the culture as a whole across the whole region changes slowly, and we can save more lives.
Yeah. And if anyone is kind of struggling with their mental health, they can contact. How do they contact you? And can you recommend any other kind of like places that people can contact?
We have an information line. It runs 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. And basically, it's a one-stop shop for almost anything. So you can do it by phone, email, text service, whatever's comfortable for you. We're trying to make it as accessible as possible. And if you had just a question about yourself, a loved one, anything really,
Mm.
if we don't have a service for you, they'd probably be able to signpost you to a local service that we're working with as well. So I would certainly be my first point of call. On top of that, we also run a mental health support line, and that one runs 24/7. And that's if you was struggling and maybe you just needed a chat, a bit of verbal diary, get it all out, or maybe it's more than that, and they'll help you refer you to the relevant services. Provide you with like coping mechanisms and support you in that moment if you were struggling.
Where can people find that number? Do they just Google Hull and East Yorkshire Mind?
Yes, it's on our website.
Yeah,
should have brought a number was mentioned.
No, don't worry. Just Google, it's fine. Everyone Googles it.
Yeah.
But then if anyone's watching it or listening to this who don't live in Hull, are there any national organisations you'd recommend?
Yeah, so obviously mine has a national charity as well, and they run across the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
But even the likes of Samaritans and things like that. But even on our website, when you're looking at your signposting options, these are all listed as well. So if you did want support and maybe you're not from the local area or you don't want to use us for whatever reason, there'll be a number of options there as well.
Yeah.
But most areas have a local mind. They all operate differently because they're a local charity. That depends what fundraising they do and what projects they get given. But it's certainly worth having a look into if you're not from Hull and East Yorkshire, how your mind could help you.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, Anthony.
That's all right.
Cheers, Matt.
All right.
Thanks a lot.